Thank you for tuning into the Grim and Bloody Theater. Tonight's guest is Sam Irvin, veteran filmmaker. Many know him for being the assistant on Brian De Palma's Dressed to Kill. He was also the director for Elvira's Haunted Hill and a number of other projects. We're going to touch on a bunch of them here on the show, and we have a couple trailers we're going to show you here. Just a quick word, there is a trailer on here that obviously our show is not for kids, but this one is definitely not for kids. So this is a horror show, and we keep it R-rated, and I think you're going to enjoy the filmmaker that we have on today and hear about his work. So sit back and relax, and thank you for tuning in.
Welcome to Grim and Bloody Theater, presented by Desperate Film Fest. I'm Kevin Nicholson, reviewer for horrornews.net and for several magazines, and just a writer about town. With me is Anthony DeRone, who's the producer and the man behind Desperate Film Fest. Also with us is a legendary Creature Features host, Al Omega, who you'll find on as a YouTube channel regarding Creature Features, and a wonderful host. And you'll find award-winning host Joe Flynn, Create TV award winner Joe Flynn.
Go Joe.
Also you'll find him on. Joe, is there a site where people can find you?
Well, they can find my show every Friday night, 11:30, Create TV, Channel 15. And then
Excellent.
Also, you can always find me on Facebook. Just look for Joe Flynn, the guy in the top hat. Not any of the dead actors or other people named Joe Flynn, because there's a lot of us.
There's only one Joe. Sorry.
We have a very special... Oh, so sorry. Please, go ahead.
No, you can't. Go for it.
We have a very special guest today. He's just. I've been a fan of his since I first saw the movie Guilty as Charged, and had a wonderful thing. I started following his his career from that point. It was then that I realized that he was so much into horror, into classic horror, into horror films, that it was just kind of mind-boggling. And that is longtime director, film and television, Sam Irvin. Sam?
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here.
So welcome.
Well, we're excited to have you.
Thank you for coming on. Appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time.
Now let me ask. I'll start off with the first question. Is, from what I've read, you kind of got into filmmaking and into horror films, and so forth. Not just horror films, but films in general, by being, kind of in and around that as a kid, or just obsessed, in and around that venue. Talk about how you came to be interested in doing film.
Well, my dad owned movie theaters, and so my playground was hanging out there and watching movies over and over, long before you could own movies, long before video and everything. I was a kid of the 60s growing up with Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine and watching Shock Theater on TV on Saturday afternoons. And I got my dad to book horror movies for Saturday matinees at his theater in the mornings, and I'd be the one to pick which films I hadn't seen that I want to see and get them to come to town. And it was the Vincent Price movies, or it was the Hammer films, or whatever. And I was just this really spoiled brat who was a monster kid from the get-go. And when I was 8 years old, my dad and my family took a cross-country trip to California. And because of his connections in the movie business, we got a VIP tour at Warner Brothers and went on the set of The Great Race, the Blake Edwards movie with Natalie Wood, Jack Lemmon, and Tony Curtis. And I watched them shoot, believe it or not, the iceberg sequence where they're all on this iceberg in a huge tank of water, antique cars, wind machines, wave machines. And the eyes just popped right out of my head. And we also went that day to see some of the shooting of Two on a Guillotine, this horror film with Connie Stevens, Dean Jones, and Cesar Romero.
Right.
And
Nice.
It was just absolutely incredible. And so it was on that day that I decided I wanted nothing more in the world than to direct movies. And my dad had an 8mm home movie camera. I just took it out of his hand and never gave it back, and started making little Dracula movies with my brother, playing Dracula with a black beach towel as a cape and lots of ketchup and plastic fangs and all that business. And then later, in my teens, I started, I edited and published a horror fanzine called Bizarre. In fact, here's one of the copies from 1974. I put Frankenstein, the True Story on the cover. And for my graduation from high school gift, I bamboozled my parents into sending me to London, and I did a whole slew of interviews of all my Hammer Film idols and everybody, and put all those interviews in the magazine. And for Frankenstein, the True Story, I actually had dinner with Jane Seymour and interviewed her for it. But also I met, Christopher Lee. He had me come out for lunch at Pinewood Studios, and he happened to be making a little
Christopher
film.
Lee, nice.
He happened to be making a little film called Man with the Golden Gun, and he invited me to stay the rest of the afternoon, and I got to meet Roger Moore and Britt Ekland and Maud Adams and Hervé Villachez and the whole thing. And I wanted to interview Diana Rigg because I loved her as Emma Peel on The Avengers and playing the Bond girl on Her Majesty's Secret Service, but she had just played Vincent Price in Theater of Blood. And I already knew Vincent Price. I had met him in America and interviewed him for my fanzine. And so I went to see her. She was on the West End in Pygmalion, playing Liza Doolittle. And I figured I'd see the show and go back to the stage door after and try to get an interview with her. Well, I sit down in my seat and I hear a very familiar laugh behind me. I turn around. It's freaking Vincent Price. And before I could say anything, he said, "Sam, what are you doing here?" I explained what I was doing. He said, "I'll take you back after the show and introduce you to Diana." And that's what happened. And I got the interview. I mean, it was just crazy shit like that was happening to me all the time. And then in college, I was a huge fan of Brian De Palma because of Sisters and Phantom of the Paradise. And I organized a little film festival of his early films and got him to come out to South Carolina. I was going to the University of South Carolina. Got him to come out, met him, took him around to my film class, and he drew storyboards on the blackboard, and he played a cue of Bernard Herrmann's score for Obsession, and that movie hadn't even come out yet, and we were like absolutely astonished. And so I became friendly with him, and between my junior and senior year, I got my first professional gig working as a production assistant on The Fury, the film that he did with Kirk Douglas and John Cassavetes. And that was my introduction to working in the film industry. And then I went back to school for my senior year. And as I was graduating, he called me and he said, "I'm going to make a low budget film this summer. Do you want to come up and work on it?" And I said, yeah. So I jumped. I didn't even I took my last exam, but I didn't go to my graduation ceremony. I just went right to New York and started working with him. And I thought I'd just be a production assistant like I was on The Fury. But he said, "No, you're going to be the associate producer and production manager." So he just kind of threw me into the deep end to see if I could swim. And apparently I did. And it was a little comedy with Kirk Douglas, Nancy Allen, and Keith Gordon. And then after that, he hired me on as his full-time assistant when I got to work on Dress to Kill and a lot of other projects that he had in development and whatnot. And that was kind of my introduction to the film industry.
I just have, for you, working with Brian De Palma, what was that like?
Well, it was amazing. I actually consider that to be much, much more important than what I learned in film school. I mean, I consider De Palma to be my graduate work in film because it was, he very much is like Hitchcock in the way that he plans his films out all very meticulously during pre-production. And so I was able to watch all of that unfold in real time, and it was incredible. And then to see it all come together on the set and the compromises or different things that had to be made, it was absolutely phenomenal. And I hate to start plugging stuff, but I just so happen to have just written a 13,000 word memoir of my time on Dress to Kill.
Nice.
And it's just been published in Boobs and Blood magazine, literally this week. And the entire issue is devoted to the film. So, go online to Boobs and Blood magazine and you can pick up a copy. All the proceeds go to a nonprofit breast cancer organization. So
put that close to your camera. Let's see the cover again. That was a nice one.
Here we go. Oh,
nice.
And it's got this really cool picture of me with Angie Dickinson in the elevator with all the blood.
That is a great photo.
That's awesome.
So anyway, it's pretty cool. Everything you could ever want to know about behind the scenes on Dress to Kill is in this magazine. There's 175 pictures.
And they can pick that up at Boobs and Blood?
Boobs and Blood.
Now, I had a question. We sort of touched briefly on Oblivion.
Yes.
And of my age group, I was the first one of my friends that had my own house and had a VCR and rented that, amongst other things. And there was something to the quality of movies made at that time. This was a B movie.
Yes.
But it was a good B movie, unlike so many others. And there are a lot of them out there that they had a budget. They had some real names in them. They had George Takei in that one. And it had, some scary points. And it had some funny points, which really made it pop. So there's been a transition now. I'm going to be a little technical here. From those days, I mean, do you have a sense of how much film cost? Because that was all shot on actual film. How much film would cost to make a movie? How much would
back in the 90s when I was making those films like Guilty as Charged and the Oblivion films and whatnot, they were usually, those low budget films were usually in the $1.2 million range. Mm-hmm. And we usually had about 24 days of shooting, that kind of thing. Nowadays, low budget films, the kind of things that I do for television are like Lifetime thrillers and whatnot, much, much lower budgets. We're talking, $300,000, $400,000, maybe $500,000, and shooting schedules that are maybe 12 days, 13, 14 days, somewhere in that range. So it's chopped in half or below half of what I was used to back in the 90s. But in the 90s, don't forget, video was booming. And the video companies, in fact, I did several films that TriStar Columbia Home Video pre-bought the video rights for $1.2 million. So your entire budget would be covered by just the pre-sale to video. And that's how a lot of production companies got these movies made. And then everything else would be gravy. They could sell foreign rights and, TV rights later and whatever. But just direct to video rights could make or break a movie. And so anyway, when I made Oblivion, that was for Full Moon. And they were making direct-to-video movies. It was Charlie Band. And at that particular time, it was one of the few times when he's actually had a little bit of money. It was Paramount was putting money into these things, and we had a budget. But we were going to we needed to build that entire western town. We went to Romania, where labor was cheap, where we could build that town. But even so, it was still costing quite a bit of money to get that entire town, done from scratch, from the ground up. I mean, literally, when I got there, it was a cornfield. And so I said to Charlie when we were in pre-production, I said, look, let's do what the Salkins did with 3 and 4 Musketeers with Richard Lester. Let's make 2 movies. And then we can amortize the cost of everything over 2 films. Yeah. And so he agreed to do that. And we had the writer, Peter David, rush and, write a second one really quick. And he did a great job. And so we went over there and made 2 back to back.
The second movie, go.
And it was all shot like, one film. I mean, we'd do it set by set. If we were in the saloon with by the way, with Julie Newmar playing Miss Kitty, the feline alien. And we would shoot all the scenes in the saloon and then move on to, the next set.
Being that things are digital now, and as you said, it brings the amount of money down quite a bit. And
yeah.
Do you think this has a negative or positive impact on the filmmaking industry and the quality of the movies that are coming out?
Well, for me, in this low-budget world that I'm kind of pigeonholed in, it's gotten trickier and trickier to actually build things, build sets, and create things from the ground up. I mean, back in the 90s, I did many films where, we were designing the sets. It could be everything made to specification. Nowadays, if I'm doing a film, there just isn't the money for that. And these thrillers that I do for Lifetime, they're all set in modern day, and you just go out and find locations and shoot at them. And there's only so much you can do, money-wise, but also the owners of the place don't want you to repaint the walls the color that you prefer.
Or get the blood in the carpet.
Yeah. Oh, my God. We don't even use blood anymore. On the Lifetime movies, it's all done in post because it's too costly if you get a stain on the floor or the rug or whatever.
Oh my God! Really? Come on!
I did a film where we had blood on the roof of this apartment building, and the guy who had all the blood stuff, he walked all the way down through the house through like 3 or 4 staircases of white carpeting, just drip, 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 drip. It cost us so many thousands of dollars to replace all that carpet. It was crazy. So, I mean, those things really happen. And
I mean, I wouldn't know a bucket of blood over a white carpet. I mean, my guy.
Well, I would
think that mutes your creativity a bit, what you're talking about.
It definitely does.
You can't do that.
It does. It does. Yeah.
It's constant compromises. You have to just find the location that pretty much works for you and then make it work. And, but when I did Elvira's Haunted Hills or Guilty as Charged or the Oblivion films or Out There, Magic Island, all those, we built everything for those things. And it was so much fun to be able to really work in pre-production, designing the sets exactly as I saw them in my head.
Now, I wanted to talk about Elvira's Haunted Hills because that was a fun movie. It went through the horror conventions, but there's probably a few that haven't seen it, even though it came out in 2001, 2002, I believe.
2001. It'll be next year is its 20th anniversary. I can't believe it.
Yes, and you directed that film.
Yes.
But I want to give the audience, because this is a theater, I wanted to give them a glimpse in the trailer for Elvira's Haunted Hills, directed by you, Sam Irvin. So let's go ahead and run that, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about Elvira's Haunted Hills. Enjoy, guys.
Ta-da!
Ta-da!
You won't be able to move. You won't be able to scream. You won't be able to take your eyes off of Elvira's Haunted Hills.
Allow me to present Elvira.
Yeah, Nice meeting you too.
Elvira!
Entertainer extraordinaire.
See Elvira stretch herself as an actress in her most challenging role.
I just love butterflies ever so much.
Richard O'Brien in his most horrifying performance since the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Oh, why? Why?
Snap out of it. God, what are you going for, an Oscar?
A film that is so steamy,
Oh, Lord have mercy.
so shocking,
That's another unfortunate Elzebus family trait, catalepsy.
Fear of cats?
you'll scream,
Yes, Johann!
you'll gasp, you'll die laughing.
Damn, hate when that happens.
From the masterfully macabre mind of Elvira.
Right, like there's something going on in my mind.
Elvira's Haunted Hills.
The village people say this castle is evil.
Who listens to the village people anymore?
All right, we're back. Hope you enjoyed that.
That was the best trailer ever. Oh my God.
It is the best trailer ever. Yes.
That really grabbed me, that trailer. I'm hooked. Come on.
I love classic trailers. I like looking at old trailers versus the new trailers. I like to see, what they put into it before, because there were, maybe you can talk on this a little bit, Sam, the marketing behind trailers. Were they done even back then by just like a completely separate team from the production? Versus
Many times, yeah. Yeah, many times. And it could be very frustrating when you felt like they were giving away too much or, whatever. But at a certain point, you just kind of have to throw up your hands and it's not my job. I direct the movie, and then the marketing people have got to do their thing. I can't be a control freak about every aspect. And going back to Brian De Palma, that it's so funny you bring this up, because he did not want anybody to know that Angie Dickinson was going to be slashed to death in the elevator in the first 30 minutes of the movie, just like Janet Leigh getting bumped off in Psycho pretty early on in the film. And so he was adamant about being, very, he didn't want photographs. So even the photograph that I got taken of me with her in the elevator, I had to sneak that because he was so worried about it getting out. And then, of course, Filmways that released it, they put shots of her with blood all over her in the trailer. They, on their standard set of 8 lobby cards that they sent out to all the theaters, had her with her hand slashed open. And, they just gave the whole thing away. And he was not happy about that. But people came, and it became a really big hit film. So, you just can't. I don't know. You can't cry over spilt milk.
So I
my
wonder.
only complaint with trailers is when they show scenes that are not actually in the movie.
Yes.
That is wrong.
I'm still angry at Star Wars Rogue One for doing that. You guys.
Yes. No, that's really frustrating. Now, do you want to hear how I got my job to direct Elvira's Haunted Hills?
Absolutely.
This will prove my monster kid cred. All right. So I met Elvira, Cassandra Peterson, at a party, not long after I did Guilty as Charged. And she said, "Oh my God, I love that film. If I ever do another Elvira film, I want to consider you to direct it." So several years go by. She calls me, and says, "Listen, we've been turned down by everybody in town. My husband and I, we're going to mortgage our house, and we're financing the film ourselves."
What a risk, huh? That movie fails, you lose your house.
So she said, "We're interviewing directors, but I always promised you I'd at least consider you. So come on over for a meeting." So I go over there. She hands me the script, and she goes, "Okay, this is Elvira's Haunted Hills. It's a spoof of the Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe, Roger Corman films of the 60s. Are you familiar with that?" And I'm like, "Cassandra, here is Vincent Price's monologue from the climax of Pit and the Pendulum. Do you know where you are, Bartolome? You are about to enter hell, the netherworld, the infernal region, the abode of the damned, a place of torment, Gehenna, Naraka, the pit, and the pendulum, the razor edge of destiny. Thus the condition of man bound on an island from which he can never hope to escape, surrounded by the waiting pit of hell, which must destroy him finally." And she cocked her head and looked at me like I was completely insane and said, "You're hired."
That's the kind of crazy I need on my set behind the camera.
Yes.
And the reason I knew that is because I had, in junior high school, there was an acting assignment for us to do monologues, and they wanted you to do stuff like Shakespeare or whatever. And I'm like, yawn, can I do Edgar Allan Poe? And they were like, well, yes, that sounds academic enough. Of course, I went home and I had taped, because this is before video, I had taped on an audio reel-to-reel the soundtrack of Pit and the Pendulum off the TV speaker, and I transcribed that whole monologue and learned it. Of course, it was written not by Poe, it was written by Richard Matheson. But anyway, I go in and recite it and get an A, and they think it's Edgar Allan Poe and whatever. And that always stuck with me, and it's what got me that job, and I still can recite it today. I mean, it will never leave me.
Now, you have to tell me, I've met Cassandra Peterson many times myself. Is she that nice to work with? She seems like she'd be a really nice person to work with.
She is just an absolute dream. I absolutely love her. We've stayed really, really good friends all these 20 years afterwards. And it actually, when I say 20 years, is really going on 30 years, because as soon as I met her at that party, we became pals. And I had her in a cameo role in a film I did called Acting on Impulse with Nancy Allen. And, she's just the sweetest, nicest person. And speaking of which, I interviewed her. I did the most comprehensive interview ever of Elvira for Scream Magazine, number 36, and I won the Rondo Award for Best Interview of the Year.
So awesome.
Elvira reveals all.
Congratulations.
We wish.
That doesn't have a double meaning, guys.
Yes.
Now, Sam, I do want to ask you, and this is a question that's going to put you more into your monster fanboy, street cred. Tell us how you got involved with the Academy Award-winning Gods and Monsters.
Wow. Well, my favorite film of all time is The Bride of Frankenstein, directed by James Whale. And I read a book called Father of Frankenstein by Christopher Bram. And it was about James Whale during his retirement. And I found the book really moving, and I loved it. And I loved that it had flashbacks of him directing Bride of Frankenstein and whatnot. And I called the author and said, I don't have no money. If you'd give me a free option, I'd love to try to see if I could get it set up. And he said, well, I would, except that a guy named Bill Condon just beat you to it a couple weeks ago. And I said, oh my God, I know Bill. I've met him through Nancy Allen at some of her parties. So I called him up to congratulate him. I said, have you thought of Ian McKellen for the role? And he said, that's exactly who I want. And I just sent him a copy of the book. And so flash forward a year, Bill had to write the script and all of that. I was in production company offices for Region Entertainment. I was preparing to direct a film called Kiss of a Stranger. And I heard them mention the title of this book, Father of Frankenstein. And I jumped up out of my chair, went out there, and they said, yes, we've gotten a script submitted to us from Bill Condon. They've attached Ian McKellen. And I'm like, whoa, this is fantastic. You guys have to do this movie. And so that's what happened. And I ended up working on it as a co-executive producer. And when it came time to do the flashback of Bride of Frankenstein, I was determined that it was going to look authentic. And we recreated the laboratory set down to the letter. I mean, it was perfect. And we even found the original Kenneth Strickfaden electrical equipment that had been used in the lab sets for the original Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. And Mel Brooks had even tracked it down for Young Frankenstein. So it even appears in that film, too. It was a film budgeted at around $3 million, and it was, a little engine that could. So we felt like we were styling just to even get one Oscar. So we were pretty happy.
Yeah, no, it is a fantastic movie, and I would recommend to anybody, even though if you're not a real horror fan, you could sit back, watch that film, and enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, thank you. And Bill Condon is just did such a magnificent job with it too. So kudos to him.
Aliens Gone Wild. I just had to ask about that one.
That film, all it is, I get asked about that all the time. Charlie Band took clips from all of the movies, the sci-fi movies that Full Moon made, including Oblivion and Oblivion 2, and just cobbled together this movie called Aliens Gone Wild. And I honestly I'm ashamed to say I've never even seen it, but I'm credited on there as one of the many directors just because I've got many clips that are used in that film.
I was just wondering if there's any connection to The Girls Gone Wild, Aliens Gone Wild. Yes, I could see this
yeah,
being a whole
the
new
title is
realm
great.
of movie stuff.
Yeah, and I the title is probably better than what the actual thing is because
I've seen a few of those movies.
and are they good?
Well, no, the title's better than the movie. That's the problem with them.
Yeah, I'll take the title.
It fits it fits directly in line with Charlie Band because he's a showman. He's all about the ballyhoo, the presentation, throwing something out there. It may not be good, but it's going to be hell of entertaining.
Yes,
and Aliens Gone Wild is you could say, you would either say if it was the 90s or 2000s that was a Charles Band film or somehow to it, or if it was the 80s it was Fred Olen Ray.
Good old Fred.
I noticed that of late you've been kind of gearing towards doing the horror erotica kind of mix of films with elements of both, and I think there's an avenue for that. You really don't see certainly a lot of like gay horror erotica, and there's a void that can be filled with that. Can you kind of talk about that a little?
Yeah, I honestly wish I could put my finger on why there isn't more of that, and there certainly was in the mid 2000s. We were right on the cusp of, our show, Dante's Cove, was very sexy. I mean, it had full frontal nudity and everything. It was something. It was for a gay network called Here TV. And we felt that it really kind of inspired things like Twilight, True Blood, a lot of shows that came out after us that were very sexy, not quite as sexy as we were, but definitely pushing the envelope and having those kind of contemporary elements. We sort of felt like ours was Buffy meets Dark Shadows sort of thing, and meets Queer as Folk. And there were a lot of shows that we thought were influenced by ours. But for some reason, the market for that, or the networks just aren't doing that kind of thing anymore, and I'm not sure why. I did hear that they're going to do they're bringing back True Blood, so maybe it's like a pendulum. Maybe we're going to start swinging back in that direction again. I hope so. It would be really fun. I'd love to do more of that sort of thing.
Well, we have the trailer for Dante's Cove. We can go ahead and run the trailer, guys.
All right, tell the kids to go to bed.
Close your eyes, kids.
Well, if you're watching a horror
close
TV
my
show, yeah. So Dante's Cove trailer. Enjoy, guys.
You paint the history of this place.
A lot of what was supposed to have happened here had elements of ritual sacrifice and sexuality.
And we're back. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for sharing that with us, Sam. That was good.
Hot stuff, huh?
Yes.
I'm a little bit. The temperature's gone up. It's a little bit.
I'm missing a lot of charges there, Ken.
Somebody give Kevin a fan.
I had an uncle that was a producer on Broadway out in New York, and thanks to him, I got to go see a lot of plays in theaters. And there was a very brief talk at one point about me spending a summer working the stage and treading the boards there somehow and help my uncle. And I didn't really want to do it, and it did not happen. But I can only imagine. My uncle, I should point out, was also very gay. The things I would have learned in theater with a gay producer as an uncle in New York, in the late 70s.
Yeah.
Whole new education right there. I missed out.
Would have curled your hair.
Well, you can honestly say we're not in Kansas anymore. No, Toto.
Well, we had Dante's Cove again. I mean, it was just so much fun to do, and the main witch in it was played by Tracy Scoggins, who she was the villainess on Lois and Clark, and she had Babylon been on 5. Dynasty and those shows, and Babylon 5. And Tracy just kind of set the tone of the series, which had this kind of tongue-in-cheek, sort of campy humor. And I loved it whenever she was interviewed for the show. They would say, what did you base your character of Grace on? And she said, well, darling, it's a cross between Joan Collins and Barnabas Collins. That always cracked me up.
Oh, yes.
And it was true.
Well, Jones Collins used to be called the British Open.
The coffin has awoken.
What the heck?
I swear, as far as '90s videos, straight to video films, you had to have Tracy Scoggins or Tawny Kitaen in the film. If you saw those two in the film, you knew it was going to be something that was fun.
Yes. Well, you know what? I mean, in all seriousness, I had much more control over casting back in those days. I could recommend, and they would let me go to town, putting all these famous faces into all the roles and stuff. Nowadays, not so much. It's very corporately cast, and they don't have fun with it. And the executives many times are not the kind of film buffs that we are. And so, I mean, I had films like Acting on Impulse in '93 I made for Showtime, and it was a Scream Queen whodunit. It was about a Scream Queen played by Linda Ferrantino, who her producer is found dead, and they think that she might have done it, and she has to go on the lam and try to find the real killer and to prove her innocence. Well, we had Nancy Allen, C. Thomas Howell, Zelda Rubinstein from Poltergeist. We had Dick Sargent from Bewitched. We had Cassandra Peterson, Elvira playing a bouncer at a country western bar. We had Brink Stevens. We had, got Peter Lupus. We had Paul Bartel and Mary Warnoff and Isaac Hayes. And I mean, every one of those people were people that I wanted in that movie, because I wanted, every time you saw some new face, I wanted it to be a famous person that you would recognize. And it was so much fun. And they let me do that on a lot of films.
Well, now Lifetime is making, what's that? Oh my God, I forgot the name.
First word sounds like.
No, it's the KFC movie. What is it called? Recipe for Seduction?
Yes, yes, the kid.
Oh my God, what the heck is that?
I know. Just read about that. It's actually, it turns out it's a 15-minute extended promo for Kentucky Fried Chicken, and they're just doing a spoof of a Lifetime thriller, a typical Lifetime thriller, but it just happens to star, Mario Lopez playing Colonel Sanders. It's like, oh my God. But I'm kind of curious to see it, because I make so many of those things. It'll be fun to see a spoof of them.
I saw a photo of Mario Lopez in the makeup, and he looked creepy. I was like, I looked at it, and I'm getting chills, like, oh.
He's got that smooth silk hands with the fake gray eyebrows.
Sam, I got to ask you though. You brought up a couple of times an actor who I greatly admired, Rod Steiger. Talk about working with him a little bit.
Steiger was just incredible. And to think that my first feature film as a director, he is the lead role in Guilty as Charged. And I was, terrified what was going to happen on the first day. And because he's a lion and an Oscar-winning actor and just incredible. And so he was sizing me up the first day as well, because I'm this first-time director, and I was worried he was just going to walk all over me and do his own thing. And he the first scene, he had to give this monologue in the dungeon of where he kidnaps murderers who've gotten off, puts them on his own death row, and fries them in his own electric chair. So he's giving.
I like that.
It's pretty cool. And so he's giving a eulogy for one of these guys that he's just electrocuted. And so he's doing this monologue at a podium, and we shoot the wide master shot. And then we're getting ready to come in and do a closer shot. And he says, Sam, what's the framing of this? Is it, the chest or wherever? And I go, yeah, it's about from the chest. He says, oh, thank God. He unbuckles his pants, drops them to the floor, and he says, it's just hot in here. So he did the rest of the shots in his boxer shorts. And at that point, I'm like, we're going to get along fine. He's a kick. And literally by the end of the day, he was like coming over to me and says, you really know what you want, don't you? And I said, yeah, I've prepared this thing like you wouldn't believe. And I come from the Hitchcock school of preparation, and he was impressed, and he saw that I, kind of knew my shit. And from then on, he was a pussycat. And by the time, when I did Out There, I called him up and I said, hey, it's a small part, but would you come and do this kind of guest role, cameo role? And he said, of course. And, he was happy to do it. And we got along great. He just was such a nice guy and so good at what he did. Man, it was just amazing to sit back and watch him.
That's fantastic. And I have a question that I hope y'all like. My question is, what do you have coming up next?
Well, this year has been crazy because of COVID, and it's the first year in a long time that I haven't directed a movie. In fact, the year before this, I directed 6 in 1 year. I mean, that's how
I think COVID-19
things have been lately
a lot of
with these TV movies. So I've got a couple of films that it looks like I'm going to be doing. One I'm already contracted for and everything. They're just waiting. We actually want to shoot it in Hawaii, and right now there's a 2-week quarantine, and they can't afford to quarantine everybody there. So, but as soon as that gets lifted, we'll probably be making that. So I've spent this year being at home most of the time, sequestered, doing a lot of writing of just labor of love, fun projects, and one of them was a children's book parody called Sam's Toilet Paper Caper about my trials and tribulations of trying to find toilet paper during the pandemic paper shortage. And it's basically, like those little golden books that we read as kids.
Let's see that up close.
Illustrated children's book parody. And this, it's published now, and you can get it on Amazon, and all the profits go to the World Health Organization COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund. And I had so much fun doing this, and the illustrator is fantastic. His name is Dan Gallagher, and we did all these movie references. Like you can see here, the grocery store clerk looks like Peter Lorre, and we did all this film noir stuff. And then I even have a Carrie homage page. I'm so worried that I'm going to look embarrassing in the grocery store, that I'm like, they're all going to laugh at you, and just like in Carrie with Piper Laurie. And so we have a page where I'm getting the blood dumped on me, and it's all just totally kooky and fun. And then the other thing that I did was I wrote a novel, which was a first for me. And it's a very sexy novel called Orb Gasm. And this is also on Amazon, and the profits go to the World Health Organization.
Nice.
And this
very
is
nice.
It's a sci-fi, very, very sexy sci-fi thriller and very sort of tongue-in-cheek humor about an orb that falls into the swimming pool of an actress who was a Bond girl, and the orb, anyone who is exposed to it, they're cured of everything, but they also are very horny. And she teams up with her gay best friend, who is a mashup writer. His latest bestseller is Frankenstein and the Three Musketeers. And they hit the road together. And the authorities, the government wants to, confiscate it. And so they hit the road to escape the authorities and take this to try to cure other people of different diseases. And they want to take it to her dad, who has Alzheimer's and whatnot. And so on the road, it becomes Alice in Wonderland, where they just keep running into weirder and weirder characters along the way. And there's an homage to Bride of Frankenstein. There's an homage to the birds. There's all kinds of craziness, and it just escalates as it goes. And anyway, I had so much fun writing it. And it was actually started as a script that I was going to make in the 90s for Showtime. And then the regime changed, and all the projects in development got tossed out. And I put this script in a drawer. And so I pulled it out this year and turned it into a novel.
That's wonderful.
Now, before we wrap this up, I do have to ask one more thing. Sam, you recently won another Rondo for the very special edition of Little Shop of Horrors magazine.
Ooh, Little Shop of Horrors.
Yes.
Discussing
Little Shop of Horrors.
Discussing your favorite film, Frankenstein: The True Story, or one of your favorites.
Yes, one of my all-time favorites. It was a 2-part NBC miniseries in 1973, all-star cast, James Mason and Jane Seymour and all these people.
That's an awesome cast.
Yeah.
And I did the entire magazine on the making of the film, and we did a 3-panel mural fold-out cover with art by Mark Maddox. I got Anne Rice to write the foreword. This was the film that inspired her to write Interview with a Vampire, that launched her entire career.
No shit, really?
And and so I'm so proud of this. And I did win the Rondo Award for Best Article of the Year, which led to Shout Factory getting me to do all the extras this year for the new Blu-ray of Frankenstein: The True Story. So this is something you definitely want to pick up. If you've never seen the film, this is the way to see it, because they did a 2K restoration and remastering of it that's just incredible. The film's never looked so good.
That was cool.
And I have a 3-hour, the movie's 3 hours. I have a 3-hour audio commentary, and then I also did standalone interviews with Jane Seymour, who I had interviewed way back. I remember when I showed you this fanzine, I interviewed her in 1974 in London. Then I interviewed her a second time for this magazine in 2017. And then a third time on camera at her home in Malibu for this.
I think Sam was prepared for this interview. I'm just
she was prepared. And so anyway, it was just so much fun, and it's a film that people really need to seek out and see. I think it's been underrated, and it's been hard to see because of the length. It's not easy for TV to program it and stuff. So a lot of people haven't seen it.
What's the Blu-ray again? Can you bring up the Blu-ray again, and where can people find it?
Yes, it's from Shout Factory.
Shout
you
Factory.
Can go to Shout Factory's, website or Amazon, and you can pick this up.
Shout Factory, they put out good stuff, guys. They do a lot of collector's editions.
It's actually Screen Factory, which is their sort of horror, division, and they're so great. They do all these great Hammer film reissues and whatnot. But also, just be very wary. Amazon Prime is streaming for free Frankenstein: The True Story, but it is not the 3-hour version. It is the butchered 2-hour international theatrical cut, which is an abomination. So do not get sucked into that. I know it's free, but don't do it. It's a third of the movie missing.
Resist.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. And I will say this too, Sam. It really is one of those underrated films that people have not seen and stuff like that. And I would recommend, like with Anthony here, our young one, we'll just call him the young one.
I'm going bald here. I'm going to look like Kevin in about a month.
Well, congratulations.
Or me, hey.
We could be the hair club for men.
Right?
Sam, you and I haven't reached for the William Shatner toupee yet. So, I think we're still good. Still good. But Sam, I have to say thank you for coming on to the show. You've been a
yes, thank you.
Oh man, I've had such a great time. Thank you so much, and thanks for letting me plug everything. It's like
you're a busy guy. You had your hand in everything.
Plug other stuff later, so that's cool too.
Sam, I'm looking at behind you in your room, and I'm saying that is the ultimate fanboy room.
I love that room.
It's Curio Shop on acid.
There you go. If we see Anthony with anything from your room in his side, I'll go, didn't that belong to Sam?
I don't know what you guys are talking
Yeah. Oh, it's been fantastic. Thank you again.
Well, where can people find you, Sam, if they want to learn more?
Oh, I'm on Facebook. Just if you just put in Sam Irvin, IRVIN, I'm usually the first one that'll come up. You'll recognize me. You can find me there. I'm sort of on Instagram, but not as much as Facebook. And because I like to do longer posts and talk about stuff, and the Instagram and Twitter and those, they want you to, have 3 words and put a picture there. But that's not me.
How dare you get people to think? How dare you people on social media to not think? Come on.
Well, thank you, Sam. Thank you for coming on. All of your work is amazing, and I hope everyone checks out your Golden Book, your erotic movie, your Blu-ray, would we live anything else?
I know. It's like I could just line them up as they,
Elvira's Haunted.
It's all about Scream Factory and Frankenstein: The True Story. Get the Blu-ray. It is fabulous.
Yes.
You will appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
Our thanks to Sam Irvin for joining us here this year tonight. Longtime director and an incredible monster kid. It was fun listening to Sam discuss. For Al Omega, Joe Flynn, our producing guru icon. I'll say whatever. The kisses behind because he makes the show great. Anthony Duran and Kevin Nicholson. We'll see you next time.
Night, everybody.
Good night.